All right, what's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 286. I'm one of the co-hosts. My name's Steve, and I am here as always with
Ron
and John.
I don't know why I can't help myself but just to giggle a little bit.
Yeah,
because it's just like with Ron and John.
yeah.
It's like we got this great meter down. You know what I mean? Like there's this great little tempo to it now.
Yeah. There were these sketches on Mad TV when they'd have like these events happening, and then when it got to your city, it'd be like happening in Baltimore, Maryland. I always thought that was so funny, man. It feels like that, but not in a bad way.
It reminds me of like that. What you just described reminds me. One of my friends lives up in New York, up in Astoria, and whenever I'd go stay with her, we would take the metro in and out of the city, and like the overhead, like when it comes up to the stops, like it's like the next stop is, and then whenever we get to hers was the Broadway stop, and it'd be like the next stop is Broadway, and it'd be like this like off tone, like it doesn't match like the other person talking, and
Yes.
like but the other ones that were along the route were like the next stop is Queens Boulevard, like it was like the right tone, but Broadway for some reason was always the one that sounded like maybe don't get off there. Like it could be like the horror movie stop.
Yeah.
But it was good stuff. Good to see you guys. Always.
Hello.
You know, what's going on? Anything new before we get into the news of our show, but like, you know, the tidbits, but anything new with you guys personally since last week? Any new pets, John? Any other remodeling? Any new home news,
No.
Ronald? Anything like that?
Nothing yet.
Haven't taken on any massive projects. No.
Good stuff.
Cool.
What about you? Are you hinting around because you've had big changes?
Nah, man, just the same shit, different day. You know, just staying alive.
Yeah.
Staying alive. Trying to sleep, staying alive.
I was about to say, do you feel rested? More than usual?
No,
Less than usual?
No, dude. I'm like, it's like perpetually just like I can't catch up, man.
Oh,
Aaron and I did have a nice little date night last night. I actually stopped by Ronald's house to drop off a gift for him and Aaron for their wedding and their new home.
Yeah.
So it was
Safely
very
distanced.
yes,
It was really cool.
Socially distanced out on the sidewalk. It was really nice to
Yeah.
see another person in person and have like a normal conversation again. I haven't seen many of those people.
Should have called me. I could have like pulled my car up and like waved to you guys.
Hey guys.
Yeah, hey.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you know, we were kind of mentioning it. Just based on every circumstance, it's just COVID and everything. Like we've really not been able to see people.
Yeah.
So it was good to see you, Steve. Thank you for the gifts.
Oh man, you're welcome. Absolutely.
I've gotten so into practical gifts, man. Like a practical gift will blow my mind. Like somebody could get me like, oh man, I got you this you know, gold necklace with this charm from your birthright, or you know, anywhere. But then I'll get like a blender,
Yeah,
a rack.
You'll get like a auto open trash can or something. You know,
Get
like
out of here. The trash can with the foot.
Yeah, the
Just
foot
not
stuff.
even
Yeah, and
automatic.
it closes itself nice and slow.
Especially if the gift that you're talking about comes with like the stamp of approval of another adult who has been like, trust me.
Yes.
You're going to be,
You need this.
I know you've had a hook for your keys before, but not like this one. You know?
Yeah. That's just that's consistent with you last week talking about like, you know, being an adult, Ronald, you know?
Yeah.
So
And
what was the
just-
practical gift? Was it something to do with cable management? Because that was the conversation yesterday.
No, this is a gift for him and Aaron, not just for him.
Not just for everyone's eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron has a non-stick pan, man. And
Awesome.
she it's like one of those pans that's not cheap. And she's just like, don't do that. Don't, you gotta let it dry. Don't put it in it. And Steve got us something to help with that. And she's just like, yes. She was so fucking happy to get that, man. She's like, a place to dry this thing. It's just, yeah. We have more.
Who'd have thought that's something that simple, right? Like it's like that's
Change your
exactly
life.
what I need. Yeah,
Change your life.
I know.
You know, we have counter space now, man. So it's like a real big deal. Like we've always been in this. So when Aaron and I really, really fell in love, I was in this small apartment, and I was like, I basically looked like I was in the McDonald's kitchen. I'm like, like kind of rotating and going to the stage. It wasn't very
Yeah.
much space. And I'd cook her up all these meals, and it just brings back this sense of full circle, getting more counter space. It's just such a big deal.
It is a
It
mark
really
of status.
is.
Like you think of the things that actually matter when you're grown and when you have a home and all that stuff. One of them, counter space, is like, because like you bring in the groceries and you run out of counter space, and you're like, we're gonna put these other groceries in the table in there. I can't put them on the floor. I can't do that in my house. Dogs will eat the
cats
groceries.
and dogs will mess with it. You just put it down.
That's their understanding, is if it makes it to the ground, they're all like, we all know this is okay for us, right? Yeah.
It's the 5-second rule, except the opposite. They're just like, I'm gonna eat everything that touches.
Well, like if something gets knocked on the floor, like we had a bag of turkey pepperoni last week that the pets got into, like something like that will be on the counter, and one of the cats will come and like just kind of knock it on the floor, and then I think it sits on the floor, and then they send in one of the cats, almost like a bomb squad, to like go by and be like, is this safe? Is this good? You know? And then once they see that, that's when I'll be down here and I'll just hear like crinkling. And it's like, oh man, the normal crinkling you would expect to happen from a person good at getting into something. And then it goes on for way too, you're like, no, that's way too much crinkling for nobody like gets open the bag and goes crinkle, 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 crinkle. But yeah.
That's so funny, man. I'm glad that
counter space was my point.
I'm glad that you have some counter space
well, we don't have enough. And it sounds like you guys are smart. You don't have the animals yet. No kids. Enjoy the counter space. You know, you guys in fact just lay on the counters.
I
recommend that. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, man, it's been good. It's been good. My week's been good, and I hope you guys have been good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think going into this episode, it's like very just a good feeling that we've all seen most of the movies that we're going to be talking about towards the end. Like we really synced up this week. I think that planning we talked about last week pays off.
Yeah. Who knew a plan would help with
what
doing
a crazy
show?
Idea. Yeah. But yeah, I guess we're going to hit some things before we get into that. But I mean, I know we usually start at the top with some news items that kind of happen between the episodes, when we record them, because unfortunately we kind of missed some and some we're a little late to. But what popped up this week? I know you guys mentioned a few things you wanted to talk about today, so let's start somewhere. Yeah,
I guess this is the second part of a conversation that we had before about Joker, the Snyder Cut's version of the Joker. So before, I'd heard some hints that he looked significantly different than he did in the previous movie. Kind of the my friend calls him Thugnificent Joker. And I
just think of him as trash Joker.
Joker.
Like Euro trash, oddly. He seems like a Euro trash scuzzball villain kind of guy. But yeah. But nobody seemed to really like that version of the Joker that was in Suicide Squad, right?
But they wanted to. I think we wanted to. We saw him and we were like, okay, he looks different. Let's see if he can perform. Because the trailer, I'm like, he looks terrible, but let's see what happens. And no,
let's see how terrible this really is.
Terrible. It's patooey. It was pretty bad.
But you also could have cut it out of the movie and it wouldn't have mattered. So that's the other thing. Is I feel like Joker was
the real problem.
Was originally a much bigger part of that movie. And I think the fact that they downplayed their Joker just shows you how problematic, and I don't mean in the current, politically problematic sense. I just mean in terms of like a storytelling sense. They must not have been that happy with what they had because he was barely in the movie. It just didn't make an impression. And I think that's what we all expected, was for a Joker to be like, oh, this is a big deal. They're adding to the, you got Heath Ledger, you got Jack Nicholson. So it's like, okay, who's next? And it really felt like kind of a wet fart when it comes to that standard.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we have a new look. It's kind of a muted sort of makeup with, which looks to be red, kind of similar to Heath Ledger's Joker, with longer hair. It doesn't look like it's another color. I've seen a color version where the makeup around his mouth was red, and then the ones that they've shown on the net are black and white, just muted colors, kind of sitting in a chair, and then one that's very close up. It looks like he's in what looks like a bloody apron, which is really cool.
I think of it as kind of a Korn video from 1999 sort of look.
Yes.
I've seen that. Like on like people calling like, is this from the Freak on a Leash video? Like, is this did somebody just grab this from the 1999 Freak on a Leash music video?
Right. MTV all over
that
again.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, we talk about this all the time in this podcast. Like the Snyder cut, the Justice League thing. Like, again, like, and I've said it before. I'm interested in seeing it. I'm just curious. Right. It's just like that car accident you can't look at. You can't not look at it. You know what I mean? You just have to look. You know, that's about my level of interest. Like, but I'm whatever. It could be cool. But I just like I don't understand. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it all just feels so late and just like why and like what does that mean that he's like done new stuff for this and like is there any implication for that in the rest of what the DCEU is going to do with Joker or with I mean like you know especially because like Suicide Squad rolls out and it's like you said John it was very underperformed or he actually performed the movie performed well but I mean like the performance the role Jared Leto of it all was kind of like underwhelming rather and you know and then Joaquin Phoenix comes out with Joker and like that's its own thing a massive hit huge like movie Oscar nominated kind of thing Oscar winning thing and it's just like what do you do with Jared Leto's Joker now like is it just like that was a thing in a movie that they're now remaking that movie as a different thing but with it's again this is like consistent for how like screwed up the DC thing feels but I mean, I in general kind of like Jared Leto. He's kind of like we talked last time. He's kind of like an odd guy and kind of goes for it sometimes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I just don't really know what this offers. That's anything. It doesn't seem like it offers anything new. Or at least whether you liked what he was going to be like in Suicide Squad, like it did seem like it was something different, something new. And that's the only positive thing you could probably say about it, which was just the expectation that it could be something that it wasn't. But this doesn't, you know, it just seemed like you said, like a little bit of Heath Ledger, a little bit of Joaquin, like it doesn't really, I don't know what the impact of this would be outside of maybe there's a scene in this movie that he's in also. Yeah. And that just is a part of, I guess, the problem of it all, but I don't know.
It does feel like a cul-de-sac, you know, like this is going to exist to support itself and to reward the people that waited for it and to give HBO Max some content. I know people bristle at that overuse of the word content, but that's what everything is now.
It is, yeah.
And so it's
I'm all about it, yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know what the plan is. Like, you wonder if it's some huge, beautifully received thing, if they're going to start spinning off this kind of Elseworld DC universe thing with whatever the Zack Snyder universe was, but they've backed away from that so much. It really feels like, I mean, we've talked about, we don't need to belabor that point of just how seemingly confused they are about what they want to do. I think the main thing DC can do that's cool is have different versions of characters and different interpretations going on at the same time and not try to make them all add up. But there's a difference between doing that with a sort of elegance and a kind of plan for doing that and just throwing stuff at the wall furiously to see what sticks, which kind of feels like where they're at, you know, but at the same time, like you said, I'm interested. I'm curious. It's definitely going to be like, just from a filmic sense, like a historical sense, this is an interesting thing. This is a movie that no one really liked that much, though. Normally when we get like the new version of a movie, it's like some beloved classic. This is a movie that's like getting a second chance at bat in this new form. And so, I don't even know if they know what their plan is, Steve, for like, oh, what if people love this Joker? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to feel like the best version of a multiverse and all that stuff was a CW mini series that they did split between a bunch of shows that are kind of okay, you know. That's crazy. I know that DC beat Marvel to the punch with the multiverse, and it's a thing that's existed. They've promised it for years, and it's happening. It's so weird to see two happening at the same time, one not being done as well and coming in late and still pulling it off in a way. Like, look, let's be honest. The whole thing that happened with WandaVision is a marketing ploy. It is. But I like to be treated well when I'm being manipulated. You know, I want to give me a warm towel. You know, don't treat me terribly if you're going to do this to me. Because look, we're being sold a product. As much as people rant and rave about Marvel, you are buying a product that someone has handcrafted for you, and you're buying into whatever they've pitched to you. But I don't feel so used. When I watch DC stuff, I feel used. I feel like, man, I'm going to try to do this. And then I'm like, no, I got betrayed again and again. And some of the stuff is good, you know, but I'm just saying, like,
you're like, this towel's cold.
This towel is cold. And Wonder Woman 1984 was crazy.
That was a cold towel to the face.
That was a cold towel. So yeah, man, so strange.
So speaking of multiverse stuff, I guess when we get to the very end of this episode, we should speak for a few minutes about what happened on Wandavision last week. But maybe we should save it till the very end, just because I have a couple quick questions for you guys about that. But absolutely. I don't think we're going to give a whole segment to Wandavision this week because we have so much to cover. But I did think, bridging from DC, I mean, we're talking about the Zack Snyder troubles on Justice League. The other director of Justice League can't stay out of trouble these days either. The guy who came in to save the movie when Zack Snyder had to leave, Joss Whedon. We've talked about this already with Ray Fisher, who has a lot of awful things to say about working with Joss Whedon on the original, or the second attempt, I guess you'll call that, at making Justice League. Today, I guess it was today, Charisma Carpenter, an actress who was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, which are like the two shows that kind of defined the Joss Whedon brand. She's always had a relationship with him that sounds very thorny and tricky about the way he treated her after she got pregnant. And as he said, jeopardizing the show. I felt like I knew that before. I don't think it ever made him sound very good. She always kind of played it off like she would still work with him, but it was a hard time and all that. But I think for her, seeing Ray Fisher go through what he's going through, not only telling his story, but being sort of, let's say, doubted, or at least not supported by the studios, you know, by the people that could help with that problem. It seems like it may have triggered something with Charisma Carpenter, and she shared something on Twitter today that was just, we've all read it. It was really heartbreaking.
It is. Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it's not so much like, what do we do with this Joss Whedon fellow? I know Ronald and we were talking about in our little text thread before this about the extent to which he's already kind of on the way out. I think he is kind of in the soft on the way out. You're saying the public punishment hasn't happened. I agree with that. But I do think it's interesting that there has not been one good news item about that guy in like 6 months or something. Every story is him leaving a project or something like that, which again, I'm not by any means suggesting that is sufficient consequence for what he's being accused of. But I also think that it's that weird thing of when someone becomes toxic, you can kind of see people backing away from him. The people that would normally be giving him super high profile jobs, which is what you would expect him to be doing right now, would be signing on to do some big thing. In fact, the big thing he was signed on to do, which was running an HBO series, he has stepped away from, which again, it felt very queasy. Like this is all surrounding this Ray Fisher thing. Like this is in advance of something even worse coming down the pike. I don't know. Those are my feelings. What do you guys think about the Joss Whedon situation as it develops?
I mean, I've kind of said stuff about this before in the past, but I think sometimes when it comes to people getting in trouble, studios can be very picky about who they choose to make statements about, or who they allow to say things. I think about what happened with Jason Mitchell from The Chi and all the backlash for that, which was awful stuff. He spoke poorly to people. He treated people poorly. And this sounds kind of on the same level to me, if not worse, than some of the things that I was hearing about Jason Mitchell. So that bothers me a little bit. All I would like the studio to do is say something along the lines of, you know, this sort of behavior will not be tolerated. I'm not, and that is something that's, and by the soft exit, you mean that nobody from the studio confirms or denies this allegation, which leaves somebody kind of scot-free to go to another place, and this other place justifying hiring him because there hasn't been any public sort of damning of a person.
Right. There hasn't been a downside to aligning yourself with him. I think, which I think has to happen when this sort of figure gets pushed out. Right.
That's all.
No.
You know, especially if it's this kind of thing. This man has trivialized this woman's pregnancy, you know, making jokes about abortions in front of people. Like If that's your humor that you have with somebody, that's one thing, but it changes the context when you say it in front of people, you know?
Yeah.
And him doing that to her, whether they're alone or in a group, is just wrong. And he keeps getting in trouble and he keeps getting away with it. But we keep hearing these things bubble up about him. I don't understand. What does it take? What does he have to do? Just because you like Buffy doesn't mean you should let that man go. Like, it's okay. You know,
right?
but,
you can still like Buffy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in my opinion, because he's not the only part, you know, of that show. Like, it may be something that he kind of created or was like a showrunner for, or whatever. But you know, Charisma, you know, Sarah Michelle, like everybody that was involved with that show. Like, there's other parts and everybody behind the camera. Like, there's a sum of people, you know, that really kind of put everything into that show or Angel or whatever you want to pick. But I think ultimately it just is the same thing over and over again, which is that, you know, it takes a lot for somebody to say something, you know, and Ray Fisher is like, you know, it's like you have to weigh this thing out of, like, you know, by speaking out or being a whistleblower, you're risking like never working again, you know, and that's just not okay. And, you know, you have to be more comfortable. You have to have more insulation in the industry, in your team, and whatever it is, that it should be okay to have those conversations. And I mean, and I think the big thing with her statement is that, you know, that she was a part of the investigation that Warner Brothers you know, put out, and that she participated in the interviews and, you know, didn't say anything during those times. I don't know if there were like NDAs or things like that, or little like periods that she couldn't speak about it. But, you know, I think it does come to a point where you do see someone like him. And if you believe what he says, and I think I do, and I think a lot of people do, even people that are involved in Justice League have come out and supported him. Like, it's not like a one-off. Like, there's a lot of people substantiating what he's saying, except for the studio. And that seems fishy to me. And that's what's concerning me about the whole thing. And I'm in line with what you're saying, is that, like, you know, you want to see the studio say, you know, we don't condone this, or this won't be tolerated, you know, and they're trying to say that in some actions by like doing an investigation, and there may be some people that really, you know, and he's released stuff like interview, you know, audio footage with like some of the interviewers that were running the investigation who absolutely substantiate what he is saying. Yeah. But ultimately, you know, the studio does what they want to do, and, you know, he's no longer in the Flash movie. And, you know, things like that happen, which just seems absolutely ridiculous. And
well, you could picture Charisma Carpenter reacting to that, you know, like you could picture her witnessing that and seeing him and going, you know what? Nobody came to my side either publicly, and it must be sad. Right. Yeah. So it really felt like she just had to say something. It makes me wonder if more people are going to say stuff.
I think they will. I think they will. I really do. And I'd be curious who it is.
Sarah Michelle, is this not Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Yeah.
Is that Sarah Michelle Gellar? She said
played
something.
Buffy,
Yeah, she said something. She said basically she doesn't want her legacy attached to his name. Like, she like recently put that on Instagram. So it's people are doing it in their own way, and I think that if Sarah Michelle Gellar speaks up, Charisma has spoken up. I think they're like, okay, these are the people that have Angel, Star of Angel, and Buffy, Star of Buffy. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to start. People are going to start saying more, because it was you know, people that work with him the most, and I feel like at some point, I don't know. And I'm not saying that he should never work again. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, if Ray
can fuck off and be fine, you know. I mean, at this point, I'm not worried about Joss Whedon.
Yeah, you know what I mean, though. Like, I
know what you're saying, though.
We're addressing the block of time that existed through Ray Fisher's experience, and then if somebody wants to chime in and said, "Hey, this happened to me as well," so what?
You might say we're trying to punish him for crimes he committed while in office, you know, and he's no longer in office, but it's still important to reach back into the past and say, you know,
absolutely. Even if you have to have a Hollywood produced sort of, you know, highlight reel of everything happening, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the other thing that makes this so sickening, I guess, is that Joss Whedon was this guy that you were sort of rooting for, and when he made it to this big success with the Marvel thing, when he directed Avengers and everybody was saying Joss Whedon, and his kind of style became the imprint for a lot of the Marvel comedy. You know, it was like a big thing. Those one-liners were a big part of what made those movies fun for people. And going back to Buffy, the fact that he had these sort of feminist credentials, and people were talking about him, how bold and great it was that he had this kind of character.
Yes.
You know, the show centered on this kind of character and all this stuff. I feel like that's another part of it, is that it feels like we were hoodwinked in a sense by somebody who we thought was smart and cool, and he may have been, you know, smart and evil or smart and manipulative or smart and shitty. And I think that those are things that are harder to root for. And it does taint things like Buffy and Angel. And, you know, I every now and then in my course of trying to get interviews with people, I will find like somebody who, oh, this is a big star, but this person played on a couple of their albums back in the day. Maybe I can get them and I can find out, you know, if they have stories about, and I'll do that. I'll try. And you can find sometimes people who had like a little bit of an encounter or a past encounter with somebody who's like a big name. They don't want to talk about it. And a lot of times you get the sense that like something went down there that they don't want to say publicly, but that there's a reason why they don't work with that person anymore. And like David Boreanaz, who played Angel, he's always very cagey, and you know, he doesn't want to play Angel again ever, you know. And you wonder, does that have to do with, oh, because I've aged and the character's supposed to be a vampire who doesn't age, or is that just a nice excuse that gets him out of having to say Joss Whedon is a fucking asshole, you know? And you start to get a sense of that over time. Look at someone's career and look at like they're not building a repertoire or a repertory, I guess, theater of like actors that like
regulars
stick with them. I mean, he does have that at different points in his career, but I'm just saying, I think you can see that there might be a kind of a theme there, that Joss Whedon is kind of a man alone in a lot of ways. And that's because maybe he burns bridges, maybe, you know, like maybe tantrums and shit. I could see, again, just seeing the way the guy comes off in interviews, he seems kind of prickly and smug. And if you love him, oh, that's because of how funny and snarky he is. But if you hear this shit, you go, well, maybe that's kind of masking a really, you know, a really ugly thing.
Problem. Yeah.
That's rough.
We'll have to see if anybody else. I mean, I would bet that more people start coming and speaking out a little more about this. I was curious who. Switching gears a little bit, the one news item that I wanted to mention, I think I sent you guys before, was just like it kind of was rumored for a while back when Disney acquired 20th Century Fox, but I think yesterday it kind of was made official that they've decided that as of April of this year, that Blue Sky is going to be closing. And that includes, you know, I think there was a movie that was in production there called Nimona, that they basically have stopped production on and won't be coming out at all.
Wow.
Yeah. And I believe there was like, I think over 450 employees that work there that, you know, either won't have a job or they're trying. One of the articles said that they're trying to like see if there's other internal divisions in Disney to, you know, re kind of direct them to. But, you know, you got to believe a lot of people are going to be out of a job. But also just another studio, another, you know, creator of, you know, these animated movies. They're most known for like the Ice Age films, which is a pretty huge franchise. And I think there's even an Ice Age series coming still to Disney Plus that either was done or is done, or almost done. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like you know, one of those things you're wondering when this Disney thing happened is that, you know, some of the subsidiaries that had the Carnation Arms and things like that, what was going to happen, and you know, here's a casualty of it, unfortunately. So I don't know. It's definitely not good to hear, but I really hope that those employees and those creators kind of maybe find a place in Disney to kind of still make the things that they would maybe be making under Blue Sky, maybe through Pixar or Walt Disney Animation. But I don't know. What's your feeling on that? Any feedback on that?
I never want to see anybody be out of work. You know, creatives. You know, I watched the first Ice Age and thought it was really good. And I've heard that everyone since has been really good as well, and some spin-offs as well, shorts and things that'll follow. And I think that, you know, it's a little sad to hear that a studio is completely going to be, because there's overlap, obviously, right? These are competing sort of situations, but I hope that they keep them working. I hope that, but it's not looking like it. It's not looking like it. Not 400 people.
And you also like think about like how much did a lot, I think, but like the whole pandemic play into this, because like it seems like there was an intention to try to keep it all going, especially because like they had a movie specifically that was a big title for this studio in production. that just got stopped. You know, I think they said it still had like 10 months left of production.
That's
and
not much
you know,
more.
it's like, but I mean,
For an
like
animated movie, no, it's
it
not.
is. Well, no, you're right. It's not much more, but I'm saying a year
But
into
for
the pandemic,
for theirs,
and you're just like, how much is this going to float?
Yeah.
You know, you're just like, well, their priority is probably Pixar and the Walt Disney animation stuff. So,
right, that's not close enough to finish to like push through. You're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Dang.
No, it's sad. It's sad. I mean, it's just because people losing their jobs, and this is the underbelly of that whole Disney Fox merger that people talked about. And again, I'll admit I'm one of the people who thinks about the IP sometimes and thinks about what that means to have, you know, the X-Men and the Fantastic Four under the other roof, and even some other stuff, other Fox properties. Like I'm real excited about this FX Alien series that Noah Hawley is making, and that's kind of technically a Disney franchise now too, you know. So I don't know. I feel like they do want to keep the doors open of some of these things they've acquired, so that the optics aren't just them devouring everything and putting a Disney logo in front of everything. But I don't doubt that this was an inevitable thing. Honestly, I feel like maybe they would have, maybe if Pneumonia or whatever it's called would have, if it had been like a huge hit, maybe Disney would have figured out some way to like, oh, this is what kind of project we will use this shingle to produce, or this is how we'll, you know, it's another level of animation for them, or another style thing. Like we can put out something a little more irreverent, or I don't know, whatever they would do. But in the end, I feel like this is just like, in the, you know, it's all Disney now. We're all with this podcast is now Disney. I just, you know, everything's getting taken over. So I think it doesn't surprise me in a way, but it also does feel like, yeah, that's a bummer when you talk about the 450 people losing their jobs. Like that right there is like, boom, that's the ugly truth you can't get away from about that situation. It's a headline that means that. And you think about each one of us having a household, you know, that's possibly 450 households where people are right now going, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And that's really sad. It's really sad.
It is, man. Yeah. Well, best of luck to them. Seriously.
Yeah.
I hope
hopefully they find a place somewhere else in Disney, or maybe somewhere else. I didn't have any other news I wanted to mention before we get into the reviews. Is anything else you guys want to throw out real quick?
No, I don't have any other total bummers to bring up. What about you, Rob?
No. I'll add one more thing I just saw before we record. This is a little more positive, I guess. But Lord and Miller announced that they're going to be bringing back Clone High, which is a series I fucking love. That I actually have. It's going HBO Max. They've ordered 2 seasons of it, which is very. I love really that show. If you've never seen it, anybody out there, highly recommend it. But yeah, I don't know when. I didn't see like the dates on it or anything like that. But hopefully it's soon, because I would love to see more of that show. But
nothing stays gone. Nothing stays gone anymore.
I know. Yeah. I mean, like you're talking like IP. You know, it's like, what do you own? Well, we got rights to Clone High, and 2 season order for it. So I mean, I don't know, man. I love that, and I don't know. That show was so funny when it came out. I loved it.
It was. Is.
Still is. Yeah. I was like, I have that first season of it, or the first volume, however they broke it out. But anybody not familiar with it, it's basically like a high school rom-com drama of like clones of like historical figures, you know, and it's just it's fucking funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a little more positive. So there we go.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Cool. So getting into the feature reviews this week, I guess the I don't know where you guys want to start. We didn't really decide that, but there's 2 kind of releases that come out this week that we were able to see before release, to kind of be able to review on the podcast on the day of release. We were able to see Judas and the Black Messiah, and very similar films, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. So it's a great double feature.
I just thought about this. If you switched those 2 movies and it was Judas and the Black Messiah go to Vista Del Mar. And then a searing drama about the betrayal between Barb and Starr. Couldn't be 2 more different films. So in a weird way, for your movie diet this week, there's a couple of legitimate choices. You know, this is this isn't Coke or Pepsi. This is something stronger.
Yeah. Barb and Starr. Let's talk about that first. If you're
Go for it.
Barb and Star. Barb and Star. It is a movie.
It's right. So far, we agree.
By Kristen Wiig.
We are on a good roll.
It's an out there comedy about 2 women that are living in middle America that decide that they want to visit a space in Florida that is known for beautiful men and great food and great hotels, and it is one of the wildest movies I think that I've seen in a while. It feels like one of those, we kind of talked about this, one of those SNL movies from
totally.
the late 90s, early 2000s. It's really out there, and it's fun, and you will not see anything like this. So what do you guys think about it?
I basically agree with you. I mean, that's what we were talking when I stopped to see Ronald last night. We mentioned it because we just both watched it, and it did. The first thing I thought of was like it felt like those, these SNL characters that kind of got their own movie with just enough there to get to an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, and a couple kind of zany sequences and a couple really solid good jokes. But just more of like a springboard for like a star of the show or a star in the comedy world to kind of do these crazy characters. But I don't know. I thought it was kind of fun. I mean, it's definitely silly, and it's not like you can what's going on. Like you watch like a minute of the half of the trailer, whatever it is, and you know what you're getting in for. But it's silly. It's fun. I mean, like sometimes you just want that, and I think this kind of delivers. From front to back, it's kind of at least consistent with how out there it is. And I mentioned the movie Synchronic last week, which Jamie Dornan was in, he's really good in that movie, which I in general really am not a huge fan of his.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of that Netflix series he did, I think called like The Fall with Gillian Anderson. But so seeing that last week and then seeing him in this week, again, the opposite kind of role. Yeah. I was like, okay, like I kind of liked him in both of these movies, and I thought he was actually pretty good in this and pretty funny. Yeah. And he's got like a musical number that he just totally commits to, and I was fucking laughing hard.
Yes.
Like it is funny. And Aaron kind of walked in and out as I was watching it, and she like genuinely was like, "What is this? This looks ridiculous. I want to watch this with you again." I was like, "Oh, we will," because I think she would really enjoy it. So, I thought it was fun, man. I would recommend it. It's super silly and it's got its moments, but yeah, it's pretty funny though. What about John? What do you think of it, man?
Silly is the word here, and silly
absolutely.
Silly to me is a state of I don't know, a state of grace. Silliness is transcendence, in my opinion. Like comedic silliness, true silliness. When they managed to deliver that to you, they paid people to light a scene. They hired extras. They had catering. They had crane shots. They have all this, and what they're delivering to you is something so stupid. I think it's glorious, and so many of my favorite things are silly, and like when something can manage to be that silly, I was thinking of so many different movies while watching this. I was thinking of stuff like the Pee Wee Herman or Brigsby Bear. Anytime where you have like this unlikely weird character at the center of something and the world kind of bends to them. In these movies, you have a difference. Like, are they in the real world or are they in kind of a silly world? Well, in this case, they're in a very silly world. Like right from the beginning, this movie shows you that it's not trying to do anything remotely grounded, like from a storytelling standpoint. It could have been a mild comedy about these two middle-aged women who go to this resort, and that would have been enough. But it right from the start shows you that there's like villains and like plots. It's ridiculous. You've mentioned Jamie Dornan, who I also have he's a total flatline for me. I love that he was playing this kind of like emo ingenue hero kind of guy. Like he's the soft emotional one, and that might sound like gender flipping, but it's not. It's more clever than that somehow, but by being dumber than that. And like Kristen Wiig and her co-star, who is actually her co-writer on Bridesmaids. So it's not someone who I think of as a face I've seen all over the place, but I think she has popped up in things. But it's Annie Mumolo or Mumolo.
Yeah, Annie.
She's the co-writer of Bridesmaids. They co-wrote this together. It kind of feels like this is Kristen Wiig saying, I want to make a movie. Like maybe this is a friend of hers she bounces off really well. I want to make a movie with this person. So in a sense, it's Kristen Wiig kind of like not starring opposite Amy Poehler or Maya Rudolph or someone you might expect, but someone like that's coming up. Like she's taking the hand of her screenwriting friend and saying like, I'm going to put you opposite me, or I want to do something with you. So you have like that. That's a fun friendship. But But I do think there's, I mean, one day I will never have to say this, but I think that seeing women get to make a movie like this is part of what's refreshing about it. And part of what I like so much about it is that it is like if this was John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell, you wouldn't even blink at this movie existing. But the fact that it's two women and that it is this silly and that it does not have to try to deliver, I don't know, whatever chick flick cliche. I mean, I say that, I even hate saying that phrase, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that like, it's great to see an anarchic, silly movie like this that's totally disposable, and you might walk in and out of the room. Maybe the way Aaron saw it is the best way to see it, Steve, because there's just isolated jokes. You might not want to hang out for 106 minutes in a row with this movie. It might be a little flabby, it might be a little messy, it might be a little like have laggy spots, but when it has one of those moments, it's just like one of those, you know, in a Wayne's World movie, there might be laggy spots, but then there'll be that golden moment. And I don't know that this quite, I will have to see if people latch onto it, but I do think this movie has like inspired silliness. That there are moments of that kind of glory I'm talking about, where it's just like, you can't have this moment if you didn't spend 45 minutes setting up this ridiculous conversation that these two characters are having, and you only get to have that. And Kristen Wiig too, if you like her comedic energy, this is her getting to do, again, I just feel like that hasn't happened that often, that a female sketch performer is able to sort of export her qualities and imprint them onto a movie the way that we've seen tons of male sketch performers do. I think that is still worth mentioning. And like I said, hopefully one day I won't even mention the gender of it all, but that is a part of what makes Barb and Star fun, is that it's great. They're making fun of a particular kind of frumpy, middle-aged, you know, heart of America woman. We've all known this woman. They're all delights. They're all super sweet and yet super kind of like sheltered. I don't know. It's just so, like, one of the funniest things in the movie is right in the beginning, in the opening credits, they're doing this little subtle grooving, and it's like, it shows a close-up of their hands kind of like patting their knee while they're listening to a song. To me, that says everything you need to know about these ladies. They're so restrained, and yet there's something so larger than life inside them. And I think that is actually well observed, even though, like we said, what the movie does with them is not of this earth.
It's, man, the constant boob humor in that movie cracked me up. The tits flapping thing, I think I've been thinking about since I saw the movie. It's like it's tit flapping, and the guy warns them before they get on the. It's so good, man, and it doesn't feel like if this is what happens when you let a woman make an incredible movie, just hands off, don't interfere, let people see their own vision. And this is what comes out. Every offering that I've seen this year, from Rebecca Hall's Passing to, you know, let women make shit. That's all I'm going to say.
Just to be clear, a man directed this film. I don't want to go too far here. Yeah,
well, you know what I mean, though.
Yeah,
like,
but they are obviously the driving force.
Yeah, it feels like right.
You know,
it's driven by them.
Gloria Sanchez is production, you know, and you know, the guy that directed it, I recognize his name from the Dana Carvey documentary, the Too Something to Fail, that came out a couple years ago.
Too Funny to Fail.
Too Funny to Fail. Yeah.
He's done a lot of television too.
Yeah, he did something for Hulu. I saw Behind the Mask. It was like a documentary about like mascots. But I totally agree with you guys. Like, it's just like, you know, you think about when we were talking about like the SNL movies that came out, like how many of them were like the female, you know, stars of the show. The only one that comes to mind is like Superstar, you know, Molly Shannon, who was a star and is a star.
It's Pat.
But I mean, like
this
one. Yeah, it's Pat. Yeah, sure. And I don't know what else. And then you could just go off with all the other ones, like you're saying, all the other male characters. But I don't know, man. I definitely would recommend checking it out. I mean, it's coming out on video on demand, so it'll be on all the platforms. It's not coming out in theaters. It's only for digital release, interestingly. But, you know, so if you're looking for something funny this weekend, or you're a fan of Kristen Wiig or these kind of over the top, like, you know, just non-realistic, like crazy, silly comedies, there's probably something in this for you. And I definitely was surprised how much I enjoyed it, and how funny I found certain parts of it. So, definitely recommend that. Recommend checking that one out.
You will find like 5 moments that you like. Even if you don't like the movie, easily. I think you'll get like 5 laughs out of it. Like, I honestly don't know how I feel about the movie. I just think it was kind of what I needed when I saw it. It was very easy to watch, and like, again, if you're a Kristen Wiig fan,
like, what are you?
What do you?
What it's like? And it's the kind of thing though where you're like, what do I really need to feel about this movie? You know what I mean? It's like it's just like so silly, you know. It's just like, this was an hour and 40 minutes of just like sporadic laughing and watching something that is completely, you know, out there, original, like, and you know, just like somebody saying something. I don't know, which you don't really see a whole lot, but absolutely. What else? So the big one that we're going to talk about, I think that probably is a movie that'll be coming up a lot over the next couple of months, hopefully, is the Warner Brothers / HBO Max day and date release this Friday, today, as you're listening to this, of Judas and the Black Messiah, which we were super excited to be able to check out. I'm really glad that, you know, we got the screeners in time, and I know Ronald, you did that screening last week. Just to make sure that somebody saw it from the podcast, but we all got to check it out. And who wants to start?
John,
you can make me start.
Yeah.
I believe you said this when you'd seen it before we had seen it, Ronald. You said so good, and then you after that said intensely good. I agree with both of those statements. I think the intense is the key word here. Like something about the way this movie moves was just. It carried you off, you know, from the first scene. You're kind of figuring out where you are with this. Lakeith Stanfield plays a character who you because he's Lakeith, and because even of the circumstances of the movie, you kind of want to root for this guy. You kind of want to like him, you know. And what he's doing is like not likable. So like the name of the movie kept weighing on me as I was watching it, and I was thinking about it, and I was watching this thing, and I kept thinking, like, you know, normally in a movie you have that sort of, if you have a relationship between two people and one person's kind of a betrayer, there's a sort of like reckoning with that within the movie. But within this movie, you realize like we're getting closer and closer to the history that I know is true. And there's no way to I mean, I would say where the movie stumbles a little bit is that it's got like a full like text chapter of stuff you have to read at the end. I often think if that's a sign of a movie that didn't quite nail its ending moment, but they want you to leave this movie with a lot of information. So this movie does end with a lot of text to tell you what happens afterwards. But as far as what's depicted in the through line of the story, I mean, it's heartbreaking, and it's one of those like Shakespearean tales of like a betrayal that you can't get out from under, or a thing. You can do something that has such repercussions and such consequences that there's no cleaning your hands, you know. I thought Lakeith was great. I thought Daniel Kaluuya was incredible. I mean, like, I've seen both these guys be great before, but I mean, honestly, next level stuff from both of them. And again, I cannot say enough about just the way the camera moves, the way the scenes feed into each other. It was such an engaging and exciting movie to watch. It sort of has the feel of like a Mobland epic, the way those movies can be so entertaining and propulsive. And you meet all these colorful characters within this world that, again, I don't know how historically accurate it is, but from what I know of the true story, I mean, they lead up to what they depict in the end of the movie is something that I've seen History Channel specials about and read about, and it seems like they did it pretty historically accurately. But man, yeah, I mean, this one kind of knocked me back, and I was like, I felt just dirty inside for a little while afterwards because of, you know, the implications of the story, but also that protagonist, that guy whose shoulder you're on for the whole movie. Man, he's doing something unforgivable. And I find that to be like, that makes me so nervous watching a movie when there's like a lie, you know, and it's at the core of the whole thing. And you wonder, is it going to be found out? It's infecting everything. This guy, if the closer he gets to these people, the more his lie hurts. And just fantastic. Honestly, I would not be surprised to hear people talking about this. Is this eligible for Oscars this year? Yeah. Okay. I was going to say next year, but it only has to last in people's minds for a couple of weeks. I think this is going to be one that gets a lot of talk around that. This in fact is one of the first movies I've seen this year that feels like that feels like this is a great movie in that sense, you know?
Yeah. And not just like for the Oscar conversation. Like this is just like, it seems like it's checking both sides of this continuum, like where it's like super, you know, powerful, super entertaining. And but a movie that is just like riddled with just amazing performances, you know, the cinematography, the direction is just really impressive. And Yeah, I don't know that I have a lot to add because I just basically agree with everything you said. I think that the standout for me really is Daniel Kaluuya. We love him. Like, we talk about him a lot. Like, we talked about him, whether it's Get Out, whether it's Widows, whether it's Sicario. Like, dude is just like literally getting better and better and better, and like setting a fucking high bar with everything he's in. And I just like every minute, second he's on the screen, it's a magnet. You just can't stop looking at him. And like I was telling Ronald last night, I feel like I was like vibrating watching him. Like, I felt so tense and so caught up in the scene and just in the story. And overall in general, but I mean, like, I think his performance, I don't know, like, I haven't seen anything this year that even comes close to that level of performance. Whether it's a lead or supporting, I guess they would fall into supporting, but it's just, I really hope he gets, at least a nomination. And I would be, nothing I've seen even comes close, like, for a supporting performance. He just, his eyes, like his body, like just how committed he is to like this performance is just amazing. And yeah, like, he is amazing. Like, he's a great actor. Like, I feel like both of them, everything they do is like the next best performance, that you'll see from these guys. And I think that's going to continue for both of them. They're like two of the stars that, like, you just get super excited for anything that they're involved with. But oh man, this movie was so good. And I do agree that, like, it does move kind of like those mob movies move. And like, this lie that's kind of at the center of this rotating wheel is like, it just kind of just, you can like feel it just rotating, and like, and the lies to maintain the lie, that just kind of spin off of it, just make it more and more tense. And even even Jesse Plemons, FBI agent, like, his relationship with Lakeith's character, their dynamic and the lies between them, it just, yeah, man, it's just, this is an amazing movie. And I can't wait to watch it with Aaron again when it comes out, since we'll have it on HBO Max. But I really do hope that an audience finds it, whether it's there or in theaters. But it does feel like one of the first things I've seen this year that feels like you said, John, like, this is like really in a lot of categories, like an across the board contender for an Oscars like run for sure.
Yeah. I think sometimes, I have to think about my life as it relates to some of this stuff. And I watched a video clip a couple weeks ago from Amber Ruffin that talked about White History Month and how basically there should be a month devoted to telling the truth. And the truth is this: there once was a time where slave patrollers existed that turned into militias, that turned into the Revolutionary Army, that turned into the police, that turned into the Confederate Army, that turned into the KKK, and those became some of the employees of enforcement of some sort, police enforcement, FBI. These things never had a clear-cut ending, right? And when you hear conspiracy level things being thrown around, it was a concerted effort to kill a person, or there was a concerted effort to hurt this group of people. That stuff has kind of been left out of the history books, right? And so when you get a story like this, that's like a real tangible proof that, the FBI made a flyer that was supposed to be written by a group of people that was used to make people fight, right? And then you hear stories about, the Bloods and the Crips that existed in California actually used to be groups like the Black Panthers that were kind of pitted against each other in the 70s to hurt each other.
Right.
And then you see this story about this young man that was 21 years old. 21 years old. He died when he was 21. So he was fighting, and he believed in equality. He believed in people of all race, shapes, and sizes. If you're fighting for the same things that he's fighting for, then you can fight with me. And I thought that was, I've known it, and I've actually even seen footage, but to see it in the context of a movie sometimes can do something different for you, for everyone, right?
Yeah.
It contextualizes things. And I think that I watched one of the better movies that I've seen in a long time. And I think that sometimes, okay, so Daniel Kaluuya is going to be the person that we talk about, right? But what I think Lakeith is doing, he's two characters in every scene.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I didn't think about until the second time I saw it. Like it's almost like watching like Scarface. You're like, all right, I know what happened to Scarface. Now I'm not comparing him to Scarface, but I'm just saying, like, you know the ending. You know that when you start, a friend told you before you watch Scarface what the ending of that movie was gonna be. Every piece of history is like that. It's like, this person is going to die at the end of this story. Regardless, this story. It's almost like that Star Wars story. You knew that story was in the middle, so those people didn't exist in the end. So how did it happen?
Yeah.
So when you see this person being two people in a scene all the time, this constant push and pull where he's just out of sight of somebody, and whatever facade he put on, he's letting out a breath of relief, because he had to hide the fact that he knew about all these things happening in the background because he was so involved. He was involved. I can't in good conscience say that Daniel Kaluuya was the best person in this movie because of that. You got a man playing two people.
His eyes. Lakeith's eyes in those scenes where it's like you see the pain, you see that he's struggling. He has to make a decision early in the movie that affects like everything he does after that. And you don't even really see him make that decision. But you're right. No, I think he's one of my favorite actors, period, these days. He just brings such a quality, and seeing him play different roles and pop up in these different films is so rewarding, because he brings such a different thing to those roles. It's like
he's a wild card.
He's always likable. And in this movie, that likability is used as a weapon to keep stabbing you in the heart, I think, because you do want to see him find some peace, and you want to see him and you just realize, because of the situation you're seeing depicted, this man can never find peace. I don't know. It's super powerful stuff. I agree. We haven't mentioned Dominique Fishback, who plays Deborah Johnson.
So good.
She is so good. Her scenes with Daniel Kaluuya, their little flirtation and relationship, man. Yes. I very seldom get steamy from watching a movie like this, especially because movies like this give 2 or 3 scenes to the romance. But man, I felt it. There was a charge between these two people, and there's a scene where they start quoting a Malcolm X speech together. Oh God, man, it was so powerful for that reason, but it was also so romantic and so sweet. And when she says, "I didn't know you were shy," and he's like, "I'm not shy," and they're so close. And oh man, he is shy. In that moment, he's a sweet boy, and he's with a girl that he likes. I mean, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And him and Fred Hampton, who we haven't said, I don't think that name. Fred Hampton is who Daniel Kaluuya plays. The fact that he's 21, the movie doesn't even make a big deal out of that. But you do see his energy and his power and that compassion. Like the fact that there's a whole chunk of the story where they're working with these good old boys, these rednecks. So the whole thing about it being kind of a rainbow coalition, he was all about that. And that's why if you ever hear about Fred Hampton, that's one of those aspects that makes it seem like even this guy couldn't get a foothold. This guy who was working so hard to make it clear this is not poor people fighting each other. This is poor people getting together to take down a system that's ruining their lives. I thought she was fantastic. The one weak spot I think is Martin Sheen's makeup as J. Edgar Hoover. I don't know why they felt the need to.
I
just don't think makeup techniques have caught up with HD 8K or whatever yet. But I like him. I thought he was good. And actually, I've been really enjoying Martin Sheen lately because we've been watching Grace and Frankie. And he's great on that. So I don't know. Martin Sheen is an actor who I'm here to appreciate. But I wish they didn't saddle him with a bumpy nose.
I'm super conflicted about this movie. Because I don't want to celebrate the death of a man, but I do think these things have to come to the general public's attention. And you know how angry I get when somebody says that a movie is timely that has to deal with this, because the system is doing what the system was supposed to do, which is oppress and destroy all people that stand in the way of whatever goal it has at the time. and it is unfortunately destroyed so many people in so many different ways. And somehow this does it in a way that feels so much more real, so much more human. I feel like, I don't know how you guys felt about this, but wasn't there a point once you saw that the movie started, I felt like I was in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, like I felt like I was a part of the group. Like you felt like when they were in the car, I felt like, oh, you felt like you were friends with them. You felt like
I had that feeling of like, what would I do in this moment that I only get when I'm watching like a pulse pounding thriller or a horror movie or something like that. I was constantly thinking like, oh geez, what would you do? You know, how would you handle this?
What the hell would you do? And the sad, crazy part about that is whatever came of the situation, and the gentleman that worked for the FBI that consequently did an interview years later and wound up killing himself the next day. He actually attempted suicide a couple days before that, and then ran out into traffic and died right after doing the interview that they show in the clip. Yeah, and I remember hearing that. I remember hearing about the first, I knew that he killed himself, but I didn't know that like days before he tried to like jump out of a window or something crazy like that. Wow. And then he ran out into traffic. So he must have felt some tremendous guilt once you talked about it. You're 10 years removed and they ask you about it and you act as if nothing happened. You're like, I was just doing what I was doing. That has to feel nuts, man.
Mm-hmm.
So,
he says, I'm not going to spoil what he says, but something he says in that interview right before they end is pretty chilling in light of what he's about to go do. So I don't know if it was that he felt guilty all of a sudden after that interview, or if maybe that interview felt to him like a chance to like put a cap on things before
redeem it,
doing this other thing.
But
either way, it's super dark. It's super dark because that's exactly what you're hoping not to happen. Even with the betrayal, Lakeith's character, you're watching the whole movie thinking like I said, I hope this guy can find some equilibrium or something, because he's a victim of the system in a different way. He just had a long death, And if you do know the history of what happens to Fred Hampton, I will say that scene is one of the most horrifying scenes I've seen in years, I think. I mean, honestly, the way it's shot, everything about it, it's designed to make you feel discombobulated and powerless and confused. And it's great. This movie was fantastic. I mean, honestly, I agree with you, Steve. It's like I would watch it again, which normally is not something I say after this kind of intense, like put you through the ringer type of movie. But there's so much good filmmaking and so much good acting. And I know what you're saying, Ronald, about it being a horrible story that you almost don't want to say positive things about. But I do think there's some power gained in presenting the story in this way, because this movie is completely unequivocal about the things that we are only now beginning to grapple with. And if anybody says this movie is timely, I think that's what they're talking about, is that now people are talking about white supremacy and systemic racism and things that people didn't use those words just a few years ago. So I do think this feels current in that way, but is it current in the sense that it's saying something new about something new? No, it's kind of the same old song. It's just a really good version.
Yeah, really good version.
So good. So that is out today. If you did not know about this movie and you want to check it out, it's in theaters. It's on HBO Max. We all highly, I think, Ronald, you would recommend it, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We this is definitely like around the horn, like recommend for movie. This is a must see movie. What else? Anything else you guys want to bring up, talk about quickly, throw out?
Wandavision.
Wandavision.
I just want to say, like, if you haven't watched Wandavision, or if you care about Wandavision spoilers, go watch last week's episode and then come back to this moment. We're going to spoil last week's WandaVision. Evan Peters, I just have one big question. Like, what does this mean? Like, I know that we, the audience, know that Evan Peters has shown up on WandaVision playing the same character, Quicksilver, that in this MCU was played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. So it's like, it hints at a multiverse thing, but if you start to think about what that actually means for the MCU, it feels like, I don't picture them wanting to introduce X-Men characters from the other movies. You know what I mean? I don't picture them wanting to do it this way. So there's something else going on than just this is the beginning of a whole multiverse, and now we're going to see Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman. I think they want to do their own rollout and their own casting and all that for these characters. So what does this mean that Evan Peters is basically seemingly playing Quicksilver in this, but it's the version from the Fox X-Men films? What does that say to you about the universe?
I think this is not a real person. I don't think this is her brother as she knows him. And I think that I think that I have a theory that the town is a training ground. And I think that whoever is manipulating her is teaching her how to do things, how to reanimate things, how to create babies on the fly, how to do all this stuff. And I think one of the things that she's going to be manipulated into doing is ripping open the universe. I think the idea that this is her brother and it's him from another universe or multiverse is a manipulation to get her to actually access another universe. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a training ground. And I think that Agnes is the person that is controlling her and getting her to gain the ability to do these things. I think that's what this was always. The town has always been a training ground, and Agnes is the kind of conductor. Yeah.
And Agnes, if you're listening and you don't know the characters' names, that's the Catherine Hahn character who's always popping up, who seems like she's a victim of the same thing the other denizens of Westview are victims of. But you're right; it could be like laying the seeds for a big reveal that she. I do think there's more to her than we are seeing for sure. So. I have not yet decided. I don't really have a theory. What about you, Steve? Do you have like a unifying theory of what that all means? Even what Ronald just said makes sense to me, but I don't know what it means.
Yeah. Like I've read a couple different theories. Like that's a pretty logical one, and I'd be interested to see that happen. Obviously, because I'd love to see more Catherine Hahn. But yeah, I don't know really what it means, to be honest with you. And I honestly, like, for the first time in a long time, I'm not really trying to figure it out ahead of time, to be honest with you. Like, obviously you see that reveal and you're like, wow, that's pretty wild. Is it like the, multiverse? Is it pulling in the character from the X-Men, the Matthew Vaughn X-Men movies? Is it something else? Or is this just literally like a joke, like these, sitcoms had, like how simply they would recast someone and just move on,
right?
Like
that's what I'm saying. Happen. Like, is it just a wink to the viewers that we know this guy played Quicksilver? That feels a little shallow for them, but I do think it could be something less like reality shaking than people are assuming.
Maybe it doesn't need to be substantial. Maybe it is. I mean, it seems like, I don't know. Like that would be kind of. I feel like that would be kind of like a disappointment.
It'd be cheap
to me personally. Yeah, very, and especially because, that Quicksilver was great in those X-Men movies. Like he is great in those, those two movies that he's in, especially the first one. But I don't really know. I mean, like I'm kind of open to it being a big deal, but it could be something simple. I mean, but admittedly, like I said, like week to week, this is the first experience for me with these like Marvel things. It's like, between movies. We always talked about how the movies are like so episodic and they're like just a massive TV show. We have all this time to like think about what everything means and where's it going. But like, I'm kind of along for this week to week ride of just being like, I'm just going to watch it in a couple of days and see what fucking happens.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Actually,
it's nice.
I think it's really fun that like now that it's kind of like gotten past episode 4, 5, and by the time this comes out, we'll know more. It's kind of kicked it up a bit, and I really am digging kind of like how much the pacing has changed on the show, and like we really are kind of caught up to the time, and like we're not kind of bouncing in and out of somebody else's perspective in scenes that we've already seen. But I'm very, very curious to see what that means. And again, I would love to see what you're saying, Ronald, be true also, because I love Catherine Hahn and anything, and she's been great in the show so far. So it'd be cool to see her.
So question to both of you: do you want to see more familiar favorites from the X-Men movies pop up, or do you want this to be somehow, even if he's Quicksilver, even if this is a multiverse thing, do you want to see a contained thing where they still get to somehow down the road roll out and surprise us with new castings, new characters, new ways of doing the X-Men? Like, do you want the Fox X-Men suddenly in your MCU? Is this like chocolate and peanut butter? Will it taste great together?
Good question. I would say maybe some of it.
I think we all know Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart is who we're talking about.
Yeah. You're like, you wanted to see them all day. I
don't know, James Marsden. I'd like to see him get a chance to do Cyclops in like a really fun X-Men movie. But I don't know, something about that just feels. Yeah. What do you think, Ronald? Does it seem like the way they do it?
Yeah, I think what's really cool, and this is kind of what we were talking about, the DC versus Marvel thing. I don't really like to pit them against each other, but they've also both tackled multiverses.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm noticing is, they take something that you've known before, like, everybody who's read a comic book, these comic books knows about House of M and stuff like that, and the Vision comics and stuff like that. And they take that and they flip it on its head with the resources that they have, and they make it work in a really cool way. So, sure, what happened. If you look up, you can even look it up. Comic Historian, there's a lot of places that kind of describe the storyline, the amalgamation being covered. But the fact that, we see this character means that it's gonna happen in some way, shape, or form. I think we can bet something on this. We're going to see somebody from the old world back then. I think we're going to see somebody big. I think maybe even I'm thinking somebody from Fantastic Four. Some people think Magneto, just because of the story
in the X-Men world. If people are listening or watching us on YouTube, hello. Is it weird for people to watch where we're never looking at our cameras? Is that just
right?
Used to this now. But the idea is that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were the only two characters that were really part of both packages, because they were Avengers to begin with, but later in the comics, they became mutants when it was revealed that they were Magneto's children. And I might be getting my timeline a little bit wrong, but they were technically part of the Avengers character package that Marvel retained the rights to, and they were part of the X-Men, Fantastic Four, whatever continuum package that Fox had, and that meant they were two of the only characters that could be in both worlds. So you had a Scarlet Witch and a Quicksilver in the X-Men movies, and then they had them in these movies too. The only difference was they wouldn't call them mutants in the MCU. I guess now they can do that. They can do all kinds of things they couldn't do before that are subtle. But yeah, bringing in like one of those actors that's like a non-subtle thing to do. That could be the character reveal we were talking about when we were saying what's going to be the supposed Luke Skywalker from Mandalorian esque moment at the end of WandaVision's first season. What if it's Patrick Stewart? What if it's that kind of reveal? Or so cool. James McAvoy or Ian McKellen or Michael Fassbender. I don't think it's any of those people, because that kind of makes waves. I mean, there was actually news about Evan Peters being maybe on this project. There's been rumors, because he was on the set or he was on a cast list or something, but people didn't know if he was going to be playing him, the character we know, or something new. So yeah, we don't know what they're doing. And you're right, Steve, they can keep all this under their hat, because the way they market these series is not like marketing a movie where you have to really convince people of a lot. You just get people hooked on. It says Marvel. It's got the actors from the movies in it. Boom, I'm watching it. Each week they reveal more of, I always say, like, this is what would be in the trailer if they were trying to market this whole idea. We would be getting hints of stuff that we just don't know yet because of the way this is being rolled out. And I think that does make it fun. Did you guys see the Falcon and Winter Soldier trailer?
Yeah.
I thought it looks good.
Looks really good, man.
Yeah, I was thinking, man, these are going to be some of the weaker characters, but they have a dynamic together, man. Like, and did I miss it? I mean, did I miss it in Winter Soldier? Did I miss it in
Civil War? You get like the setup of like War. They kind of he just turns to him and is it Sam says to Bucky, "I hate you," when they're just sitting there together.
Man.
But I think the fact that they're both like the little bro of Steve Rogers. What I've heard is that even though at the end of Endgame it suggests that Falcon is Captain America now, they said in the world of the show you realize that issue is not so settled, that's actually kind of a through-going idea, is like, does Falcon have the right to call himself Captain America, and if not him, who? So maybe Bucky is a little chapped about that, but those two guys they're good actors, and seeing them have some comic energy and some charge. Yeah, I agree with you in a sense, Ronald, that like I realized there was more there than I thought as far as like the potential of it. But this feels like espionage. I mean, this show feels like it might have some of the fun thriller aspects that the Winter Soldier movie had. It feels like it's in that zone.
Yeah,
a little more grounded.
Soldier. Love the Winter Soldier.
And you love it. You love to see it on the screen, and like the date is like a month away.
Yeah.
You love it. You got to love that.
It's so crazy the way that Disney hit us over the head this year. They took a year off, and it seemed like, look, COVID changed things for a lot of companies. They fell back a little bit. They got their ducks in a row, and then they just started hitting us with these bombshells, and they keep coming. And the idea that like these are serving the film as well is insane. And there's reactions and timelines that intersect with films. This is insane, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So I feel like
great.
you, Steve. I'm guessing as I go along.
Yeah,
Aaron will sometimes she'll like shake my shoulder and say, "Hey, I think that this," and it's cool to go back and forth. But yeah, it's nice to just be like, I don't know what the hell's gonna happen next.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Very cool. So what else? Anything else you guys want to mention?
Did you guys watch Young Rock?
I did not watch it.
Okay.
No, you guys can mention it though.
Did you watch it?
I watched Young Rock and the Kenan show.
Okay, maybe we could talk about Kenan first since we both saw it.
Let's keep this brief too, okay?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like the Kenan thing, it felt so piloty to me, man. It felt like there's no way this show, if it's going to stay on, it has to find a rhythm and a footing beyond what I saw in that first episode, because the performers are there, the potential for like a pretty standard kind of sitcom are there, but it felt really, just from the production values on down, it felt really rough to me. I don't know if I was just not in the mood for it, but it felt like it wanted to be a traditional sitcom with a studio audience. Instead, it's a single camera thing, and it just doesn't feel like it's got the vibe of it's like the vibe of a laugh track sitcom, but in single camera form. And yeah, I love Kenan Thompson. It did not work for me.
Yeah. I hate when death is used as a cheap tool to make you feel something for a character. And this ain't it. That's all.
Yeah.
This ain't it.
When you said it made you sad earlier, I was like, I'll hold this for the podcast. I didn't know if you meant because of its quality or because it dealt with death. And now I'm understanding you meant the quality. So I'm glad.
Yes. It made me so sad.
Yeah.
And then Young Rock, a semi-autobiographical or pretty biographical. He's taking some liberties, but this show kind of takes place in 2035. The Rock is running for president, and he's being interviewed by Randall Park.
Yes, seemingly as himself, right?
Yeah,
like he's playing Randall Park.
Who is Randall Park, and he mentions every second that he used to be an actor, and now he's like a prestigious interviewer.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I love it.
He's interviewing The Rock, and The Rock is giving his story. Kind of like, he's a guy that people are familiar with, but they don't really know much about his personal life. And he is tackling it through these 3 timelines that are intersecting, kind of. And I'm on board, man. I actually watched the first 3. It's scattered, so it's the first 2 and then 6. But the first episode is incredible. It has some flaws to it, but if you look at your parents as superheroes, this will tug at your heartstrings, man. Especially since this man was literally around superheroes. Andre the Giant, the players in it that play the WWE stars, from Andre the Giant to Iron Sheik, Randy Savage, these are perfectly cast. And his dad, Rocky Johnson, perfectly casted people. If you look at these people on the internet versus who they are in the show, it's like it's so similar. It's crazy, man. So
yeah, I don't know if I enjoyed it quite as much as you did. I do think it felt kind of piloty to me too, particularly the wraparound segments, the way they're filmed and the rhythm of them. It really felt like it needed a studio. Like it's almost like there are pauses for laughs or something. Yeah. And I don't know that Dwayne Johnson, who can be a great actor, I don't know that he always nails like the comedic tone of some of those moments. But I think it's an intriguing idea, and I think this idea of the the way the segments are filmed, I felt those felt a little more self-assured, the actual parts of his life that we were getting into.
Yeah.
But I would watch the second one just to see how it progresses. I honestly think for wrestling fans, this might be a more meaningful show. I will say that one of my favorite moments is wrestling centered, though. There's an Andre the Giant moment in the first episode with Dwayne when he's a little boy. That was great. I mean, honestly, it was my favorite moment in the whole episode that I saw, and it was really like, that was fun. So I have a feeling that, and the wraparound, the humor of it being Randall Park and them commenting on his career, little things like that. There's a silliness in this too that feels like it could grow and it could be very enjoyable. But I don't know if there was just something about the way it hung together that felt a little bit like it hasn't found its pace yet. But pilots of sitcoms are always that way. They're always proof of concept with a little something extra, and I think this one does indicate to me there's a show there. So
you can tell by the pilot that they saw that Andre the Giant's. You'll see.
Okay, no, I'm happy to watch more. But that the moment the moment that moment is incredible. That moment just really works. So
I enjoyed it, man. So Young Rock, please check it out.
And that starts next week, right?
Yes.
Nice. I think those
February 16th.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's weekly. Okay, cool. It'll be released weekly. Cool.
On week 2, something will replace the Kenan show. I predict, but maybe
Guaranteed.
I'm wrong. I mean, honestly, episode 2 of the Kenan show could be like boom. Sitcoms are like that. Like you just never know. But this, they recast very late in the process Don Johnson over Andy Garcia, and seeing this makes me wonder, like, how bad was Andy Garcia if this is the improvement? But Don Johnson, I mean, again, I like Chris Redd. I like all the people that are on the Kenan show. So I would hope that it kind of shakes off those doldrums.
Me too.
But the Young Rock is a much more promising one.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
That's a lot.
That's everything, man.
Watch anything else?
I mean, we talked about mentioning Malcolm and Marie on Netflix. I wasn't really a fan of that movie, man. It really took a lot. It really took a lot for me to get through it. I got to be honest with you, man. I am out on John David Washington.
Really?
I am out. Like, I'll acknowledge, like, he is better in this than he's been in anything else, I think. But the only thing that kept me going with this movie is Zendaya, like, who is amazing. She, like, her performance is period. Like, this movie is her performance, to me at least.
Yeah.
There's something that she's got going on that just really kind of drives this movie through, for being it's not even that long of a movie, but it kind of felt like a lot of spinning wheels to me, and like a lot of like revisiting the same hate and toxicity in a relationship that is like really hard to watch on the screen, and them kind of going back and forth in these arguments. Like it just felt like they were mining the same trauma from their relationship over and over again. And that was hard to see. Just, having been in past relationships that were not healthy and things like that, like, or a past relationship that was not healthy, it was like, definitely hit close to home in some ways. But seeing like the same thing over and over, I just felt like the arguments felt more like monologues to me instead of like active arguments, where you hear two sides of this relationship consistently. I don't know. I didn't dislike it like straight out. I didn't hate this movie. Like, I definitely was looking forward to it more. I really do like Sam Levinson and a lot that he's done. I liked Assassination Nation. I like Euphoria. But I don't know. I was really curious to see if like he would turn for me, like in this John David Washington. But talking about Tenet like a couple weeks ago, and I don't know. I can't get behind this guy. Like, I'm a little worried that he's got that nepotism going on. Like he's kind of getting these green lights because of who his dad is. I don't know, but
you're experiencing something from a few years ago that I suffered from. It's called Joseph Gordon-Levitt syndrome, of being afraid an actor that you don't particularly care for is about to be cast in something and you're going to care. I will say I've warmed up to him a little bit, so maybe there's the right role for John David Washington. But I kind of agree with you. Yeah, no, he's had the opportunity.
I liked him on Ballers a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I thought he was great on Ballers, which was like, oh, I like this dude a lot. And then I start seeing him in these high profile movies, and I'm like, I don't know if I like this dude. And and I think that the problem that I had with him in this film or this role specifically was like, a lot of his performance to me just felt like he was just like yelling a lot, you know, like I feel like I didn't feel the emotion coming from him that I felt coming from Zendaya. Like every time they go back and forth, I'm just like, she just slayed him. Like this is done.
Yeah.
Like not even in their context of their argument, just in the performances, you know, of this, like this is a twofer. You only see these two people this whole movie. And like, you know, I do think maybe like, I know this movie hasn't been like super well received because a lot of what the filmmaker, the writer, the director is saying about film critics and things like that in this movie, there's a lot of it's being tied to him and some issues he's had with some of his criticisms himself in life, which is problematic. And I can understand that, but you know, but I do think her performance is great. And I would not be shocked if like she stays around the conversation for some sort of, you know, nominations and things like that. Cause I love her, like legitimately. I love her in Euphoria, like the Spider-Man movies, anything she's in. I think she is like top notch. She's like a future star. She is a star, but I mean, she is the future star. I think of a certain generation, and like, you know, I can't wait to see what she's in next. Did you liked it more, Ronald? Like you were into it?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, you know, it was long, man. Like I think sometimes, so I thought that John David did a really good job, but what I want sometimes is for him to find this cool subtlety in his performance. That's what I want.
Which she has. Like
she has. So
she just sits in that bathtub and watches him try to tear her down, and then just like doesn't say a word. But he's not. I don't think he has that like counter to her really in the movie.
That's interesting.
But I know what you're saying. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. The subtlety.
Yeah, subtlety. Now, let me ask you a question, Steve. You know, watch it. John, did you see it?
Mm-mm.
If you could hot swap another actor that you think could go toe to toe with Zendaya, who would you hot swap?
We talked about this with Tenet. My guy is Stephen James.
Oh my God.
That's my guy, dude. Like I want him. I want him in these John David roles.
Oh, he would have tore this.
Just thinking about him in season 1 of Homecoming.
You made me feel crazy when you said it. Like, oh yeah, he would have killed this role. Like
you watch him, I feel like that emotion with him. I don't really feel the emotion from John. I don't know. I'm sorry, but that he'd be my pick. I want to see him in everything.
It's weird that you're saying he yells in this because normally he's one note in the other direction. He's kind of whispery and quiet, you know. So it's interesting that he would be.
This was kind of
like an amp. He's got a volume setting. He turned it up for this one.
Yeah. It was like somebody heard that. He heard that note, and he was like, you know, every scene, every time I talk. And, you know, sometimes it felt like he was swallowing his words, which got kind of weird for me, too. Like Zendaya, you know, you can hear everything she was saying. Sometimes he'd be like, you know, it'd be a lot of that. And I'm like, what did he just say? Like, I had to rewind a couple times. But I liked it. I liked it. I've been liking these play style films, you know.
I was going to say that is kind of like a. I did enjoy that part of it. Like that idea of like you're just sticking with these two people for the movie. Yeah. This back and forth does work. And I will say, like, I may be out on him, but I do think this is probably one of his better performances in movies. You know, like beyond me loving him in Ballers, he does do something different in this movie that I think he hasn't even tapped into in Tenet or in Black Klansman. There's something happening in here that maybe is a sign of another, you know, maybe the next movie, you know, I'll change my mind, but yeah, the whole time I'm watching, I'm just thinking like, who else would have been like a match for her? And, you know, other names pop to mind, but like, he's always the guy for me. Or, I don't know. He's so good.
Or Jonathan Majors. That's
again, like he would destroy that role. He would have been amazing in that movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would recommend checking it out, John. I mean, and it's an interesting movie in the least because, you know, you have like these two like stars, you know, like up and coming stars. And even the filmmaker himself is like, you know, kind of one of these guys that kind of like are getting bigger and bigger, you know, as he goes along. Mm-hmm. So just for the conversation, you know, because it is kind of like something that people are talking a lot about. It's been a big hit on Netflix. Apparently, you know, it's like was number 1 over the weekend. It came out. Yeah. But Zendaya is like, she's amazing. God, she's amazing.
Yeah, that's insane. Insane. I like this turn on John David, but I think that he's gonna win you back at some point. He lost me with Tenet. He lost me with Tenet, man.
Maybe they'll make a Ballers movie, and that'll get me back.
And then cross over with Entourage somehow.
There it is. You just did it.
Yep.
Peter Berg will direct it. Mark Wahlberg produces it. You're done.
Yeah.
A cop movie, a buddy movie with him and Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
There it is, John.
Where you have one guy who's a little bit too theatrical no matter what he does, and another guy who's either talking down or yelling. I think that sounds like, that sounds like a movie.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
It was an interesting movie to watch. Like I just had trouble getting through it.
Well, it was shot under interesting conditions, right? It kind of made the news because it was like a COVID shoot. It was one of the first big, we're going to make a movie and here's how we're doing it. I remember reading about the protocols, and that's honestly the main reason I was curious about this. But I agree with you. Zendaya is like one of those actresses that you're interested in what she's doing because she's always doing something interesting. And I know that's a statement amazing. That kind of folds in on itself, but you know what I mean? It's like, who knew? If you're interesting, people will be interested. She does it.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah. That's what Netflix now. I mean, if you haven't heard of that one, Malcom and Marie is on Netflix for streaming. Came out last week. But I think that'll probably wrap it up. You guys,
that's a lot.
Mention? No, that's a whole lot of episode. So just to recap real quick. So Judas and the Black Messiah is on HBO Max today, in theaters as well. Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar is on any kind of the PVOD over-the-top services, Apple, Fandango, any of those if you buy or rent your movies that way. And then Malcom and Marie is streaming on Netflix now. And then next week, the 16th, I think the 2 episodes that John and Ronald talked about, the Kenan Show and Young Rock will be coming out on NBC. Did we talk about anything else? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
That's a good recap. Yeah, so that's where you can find everything that we talked about. If you check any of them out, let us know what you think of it. You can comment on the post if you follow us on Facebook. You can email us at movieschmovie@gmail.com. Or you could even leave a review on this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Saying, hey, I agreed with this movie's review, or I didn't like this one, but I love the podcast. We'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Or with a star rating, anything like that, it would be appreciated. So we'll be back next week with we're going to be talking about actually a movie I've been looking forward to, Silk Road, which is coming out from Lionsgate finally. This is a movie directed by Taylor Russell, who recently did the Night Stalker series on Netflix, which is really great. If you guys haven't seen that, I don't think I mentioned that on the show, but that was great.
No, it was.
That's his I think that's his feature directorial debut coming out next week, called Silk Road. We'll talk about that next week, and I'm sure we'll do a little more catch up on WandaVision because we'll watch the episode that comes out today as you hear this.
I'll be talking about the dramatic appearance of Halle Berry as Storm.
That would be nuts.
It would be awful.
No, don't put that into the world, John. The one Marvel person listening to this podcast are gonna get it.
Famke Janssen. Oh my God. That's all right. No, fine actors, but not their best work. So that's gonna wrap up this episode. Again, movieschmovie.com is the website. You can subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms that are out there. We should be on all of them. If we're not, please let us know so that we can make sure that we get there. We'll talk to you guys next week. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.
#Free Britney.